gentlemen, now we will begin 15-minute overtime period.
Tails never fails. Tails never fails.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Overtime Win podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Nguyen. Today we'll be covering the NFC West, consisting of the LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks, and Arizona Cardinals. Starting with the Los Angeles Rams, we'll start at the quarterback position. We have a starter in Jared Goff, first overall pick in the 2016 draft. Behind him, Blake Bortles, a player from Jacksonville, who is very inconsistent as a starting player, but provides some sort of security at backup. Next up, the running back position, we got a Todd Gurley, first round pick out of 2015 draft, Malcolm Brown, and John Kelly, a 6th round pick out of 2018 draft. That's a solid trio. I like that trio. One thing that the Rams sort of suffered with last season was that when Todd Gurley had ups and downs, right? At least they had a second player in C.J. Anderson who could step in, provide some sort of some spark when there wasn't any. Although Todd Gurley is sort of was in that MVP conversation last season, he definitely was not the best. He had some flaws, right? Having depth there is good. It's always good. Moving on to tight end position, we got Tyler Higbee, 4th round pick out of the 2016 draft. Gerald Everett, 2nd round pick out of the 2017 draft. And that's it. Just those two players. I know for sure I can remember some plays that Tyler Higbee made in last season. He offers versatility as a catching back. And Gerald Everett, more of a blocking tight end. That's a solid group, but I like variety in age. So preferably, if I were the Rams, I would go after maybe an older tight end. Just because I don't think 2 is enough really. If the Rams are really a really gadget sort of one read team. They have a lot of different concepts, and I think that having a tight end, a solid tight end group, really supports that cause. Let's move on now to the offensive tackle position. At left tackle, we have Andrew Whitworth, a Pro Bowl player, All-Pro player, but he's old and he's about to retire, I believe, within the season or next season. So that's really a need if they don't have anyone behind him. On the right side, we have a Rob Havenstein, 2nd round pick out of the 2015 draft. Behind those two, we have a Darrell Williams and a Kyle Murphy, who aren't proven at all, I'd say. That's why they drafted a Joseph Nate Boom, 3rd round pick out of the 2018 draft, to replace Andrew Whitworth when he retires. But then the Rams are also faced with a scenario that they don't have anyone in their left guard position because a player in Roger Saffold left the Rams this offseason to the Titans. So that's a major concern because there's no one after him, really. So the Rams are probably going to have to move Joseph. If they don't draft the situation, they're probably going to have to move Joseph maybe into that left guard position, but I don't think that's where he will succeed. Ultimately, he's going to be their starting left tackle. So they should seriously consider with their first pick in the draft, they should consider left guard. That's by far the biggest need. Than just other positions. Anyway, moving on, we have a Brian Allen, a 4th round pick out of the 2018 draft at center, and Austin Blythe at right guard. Behind them, we have a Jamil Demby, who provides some security, but obviously he's not anywhere. I don't think he's close to being a starting to fill that starting guard role. So yes, definitely address that position in left guard. I would also consider drafting someone in the later rounds, maybe of 4th through 7th round, just to be another sort of not a swing tackle, but it's just a lineman that can play inside and outside, who offers versatility. Because the offensive line in the Rams offense is really important. That's why they were able to have Todd Gurley in the MVP conversation in the first place, right? They provided a lot more push, a lot of space, and that's something that is essential to the Rams offense. Moving on to receiver, we have Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Brandon Cooks. That's a solid trio. But in the case that one of them falls or gets injured, for example, Brandon Cooks last season, or Cooper Kupp last season, they need someone to step up. They need people to step up, and definitely that's something that they should consider improving. Not just by a draft, not just in the third round picks, but also someone they should invest in the veteran market in free agency. Because behind them we have a Josh Reynolds and Mike Thomas. They're both mid-round picks, but they haven't shown too much. So definitely something they should consider. Let's move on to the defense. They have a 3-4 defense, which means let's go to the interior defense first. At left defensive end, we have Michael Ruckers, first round pick out of the 2012 draft. At nose tackle, we have what lists here to be a Tanzel Smart, a 6th round pick out of 2017 draft. And at defensive end, Aaron Donald, first round pick, 2014 draft, MVP type of player, the best defensive tackle in the league. But there's a hole there. Between Michael Ruckers and Aaron Donald, there's that role in the middle that isn't really filled by anyone. A 6th round pick is not going to cut it. Behind him, they have a 6th round pick and a 4th round pick player, but they aren't. They're really just backups. They're not starters by any means. And if they need three down defensive linemen, that's going to be needed for them. So definitely nose tackle, defensive tackle is going to be a need in this draft. Also, too, defensive end, edge players, as they would say in the 3-4 defense. They need edge players. Dante Fowler is a good player. Samson Ebukam has shown some pass rush ability, but that's about it. They brought in also this free agency. They brought in Clay Matthews to fill in that third role, but I still don't think a 3 is enough because they already struggled last year, especially trying to rush the quarterback. It hasn't shown a lot of. It's not a strength in their defense. So definitely, defense edge player is definitely a need that should be addressed. But also too, inside linebacker is also a big need. Corey Littleton, like I mentioned before, and Micah Kaiser, 5th round pick out of 2018 draft. These players aren't really they aren't good players. I'm gonna be straight up. This linebacker position is something that the Rams seriously need to consider, because that's really not gonna cut it. I suggest that they should draft someone in the 3rd round of the draft. See some guys at who are a little bit older too. Some veteran players. Because that front 7 group has some major flaws that they need to fix. Moving now to the cornerback position, we have Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib, 2 really, really good starters. Major concern though is Aqib Talib is getting older, so they should consider replacing him soon. And behind them are a couple of veteran players, but not players that can be developed around. Corner is a need. In my point of view, it's a need. Not currently, because it might take some time to sort of fit them into the role. And also, these 2 players are really, really good in general, right? But Nickel corner is something that they don't have to worry about because they have a player in Nickel Roby Coleman. He's a really solid, I think the best nickel cornerbacks. So they don't have to worry about that. Moving on to free safety, and they have Eric Weedle, a veteran safety from Baltimore. I think he's more of he's not a long-term a player. I think he's probably just gonna play, fill that role as long as he can. Yeah, he signed a 2-year deal this offseason, so it's not long-term by any means. He's not someone that you plan your defense around in the long term, and especially too. I should say this: the Rams should consider their situation, right? Because they signed a lot of free agents, high-level free agents, what you might call a dream team. But I don't see them that being the face of the franchise going long term, because they're always gonna get older, especially Keep to Leave. I mentioned Eric Weedle. They're gonna get old, so they need players to replace them. And I think low key corner safety is something that they should seriously improve on. Let's now move on to the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that can seriously contend for the division, for the wildcard spot, if they fix some of their needs. They have a lot of needs, but also a lot of bright spots within their roster. For example, let's go over to quarterback. We have a Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard. This is the strongest group, positional group by far in the offense. In the team as a whole, I say. Jimmy Garoppolo has shown a lot within his limited starts. In the 2017 season, he was traded, and in the final 6 games of the season, he was on fire. Like every single game, he was good. Like he led that team really well. But in 2018, he in week 3, I think, he tore his ACL, and then he had to miss up the season. That's a bad thing, I guess, for that team, because they had a lot of potential. They could have gone places, but that's also a good thing because we got to see the likes of Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. They have a lot of potential. They have a lot of potential, the whole group. Nick Mullins provided a spark. CJ Beathard was a solid player. Really like the group. Let's move on to running back. They have another really strong group in that consists of Tevin Coleman, a player they got this offseason, Jerick McKinnon, pass catching sort of running back, Matt Breida, a hard hole hitting running back, and a fullback in Kyle Juszczyk. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to try. But yeah, he's a really good fullback as well. So that group right there, a solid four deep, that is what you build your roster on. I really like that running back group. Not a need. Moving on to tight end, we have George Kittle, 5th round pick out of 2017 draft. Don't let that fool you. George Kittle was explosive last season. I think he had the most receiving yards. Zach Ertz has the most receptions, but George Kittle had the most receiving yards in the NFL. He was used a lot in the offense. Behind him, we got a Garrett Selleck, and that's it. Tight end is something that the 49ers are seriously looking to investing in, it, especially if their receiving core is a little bit not as flashy. Seriously consider drafting but like someone versatile that can replace Garrett Selleck. Also just fill the role of more of a blocking role. But that's a solid group right there. I'd say definitely target someone a little bit later in the draft, maybe 4th through 7th round. Let's move on to tackle. Left tackle Joe Staley, 1st round pick out of the 2007 draft. That is 12 seasons right there. 12 seasons in NFL. Solid, really good player, but he's old. He's getting old. So they have some plans in place. For example, they want to put Sean Coleman, a player they got from Cleveland. They want to put him into that left tackle role. I'm okay with that. That's fine. And at right tackle, they have Mike McGlinchey, a player they selected in the first round last year. But behind them, those three players, no one else. I'd say tackle is definitely a need. Um, just a swing tackle, someone that can play both positions. Um, there's promise there in Mike McGlinchey and Sean Coleman. Moving on to the interior offensive line, left guard, Lakin Tomlinson. At center, Weston Richburg. And at right guard, Mike Person. Um, Mike Person is getting older, so I would definitely think about replacing him with Josh Garnett, a player they selected in the first round in 2016. The only thing is Josh Garnett gets injured or is not active a lot, I guess. So it's a little bit questionable. And also, too, after them, there aren't that many players. There aren't players that can be trusted. Right guard is definitely a position that they should look into in the draft, and just having depth. So what we covered so far, offensive line is a need. The starting five, not too bad, but definitely depth is a major need, and then planning for the future. Moving on to receiver, we have Jordan Matthews, a player they acquired from Philadelphia this offseason, as well as Marquise Goodwin, a fast receiver. He provides a vertical threat. They also have a Dante Pettis, a player they selected in the second round of last year's draft, and a fifth round pick in Trenton Taylor they selected in 2017. Besides that, all the other players are not proven, I'd say, whatsoever. So receiver is definitely a glaring issue that we need to fix. In the offense, receiver is the biggest need, but tackle and guard is something that they should definitely fix in this year's draft. I'd say the only thing is, though, they don't have 6 picks. First, second, third, fourth, sixth. So for those first 3, definitely the first pick or the second pick, go after a receiver, and then the second or third, go after a tackle or guard, someone of the sort. Okay, moving on to the defense. They have a 4-3 defense. Starting at left defensive end, they have a Solomon Thomas, first round pick out of 2017 draft. Solid. I really like that. At backup, they have a Kentavious Street, a fourth round pick out of the 2018 draft. He hasn't been featured much, but I think he's a solid depth piece. D Ford is on the right side, and he's backed up by 2 5th round and 7th round draft picks. Personally, I think that the 49ers, if they are in this situation too, should definitely look into investing in that left defensive end position. And one thing too, they have the 2nd overall pick in the draft. And trading, I don't know necessarily. Okay, they should seriously select Nick Bosa with that first pick. All right. He's a really valuable player. He could go in, contribute immediately. He'd be a game changer for the defense. But somewhere also deep inside of me knows that the 49ers need a lot of improvement in multiple positions. So, I don't know. I think they could do themselves some good by trading down, getting a couple more picks, and using those picks to adjust the offensive line, stuff like that. But if they really love that player at 2 overall, get Nick Bosa. Anyway, moving on to the interior defensive line, we have Eric Armstead, first round pick out of 2015 draft, and DeForest Buckner, first round pick out of 2016 draft. So far, I already listed 3 first round picks in this defensive line. That's really good. I think that's a solid starting group. Behind him, we have Sheldon Day, a player from Jacksonville they acquired, and DJ Jones, a 6th round pick out of 2017 draft. I think that's a good 4, but defensive tackle is something that they should also look into investing in a little bit later in the draft, 5th, 6th, 7th. Just a thought. Okay, let's now move on to linebacker position. At the middle linebacker position, they have Quan Alexander from Tampa Bay. He's rangy. He plays He plays a zone cover role. He plays it well. At strong side linebacker, they have a situation where they're not really sure where they're going. Personally, I think they're just going to stick with Fred Warner, the third-round pick from last year's draft. I personally really like him. Hard-hitting linebacker. Also plays a good cover role. Behind them, they have a David Mayo from Carolina and a couple other players that they acquired from other teams, but none of them to stand out that stand out that much. Linebacker is a position that they can adjust in the draft. That's a position that they should pick up. Should pick for in the case that they do trade down for one of their picks. They don't have enough. Really, they don't have 6 picks. They don't have enough to adjust all the needs. But linebacker is something that they should seriously consider for depth. Let's move on to the corner position. Left cornerback, we got a Richard Sherman player, one of the best corners in the league. But he's not really supported by his teammates, I guess. Because at right cornerback we have Akello Witherspoon, a third-round pick out of the 2017 draft. He needs some improvement. He's been on and off. He has some good, he has some bad moments. And at nickel corner we have Jimmy Ward, a first-round pick out of the 2014 draft. I think that's a good solid 3, but something just doesn't feel right about it. Behind him though we have a Jason Brett and a Tavarius Moore, a third-round pick out of the 2018 draft. So they have some talent. They just need some time, I guess, to process, to figure it out. But I think it's not too much of an issue. Where the issue, though, is at safety. A free safety, we have Adrian Colbert, 7th-round pick out of the 2017 draft. Obviously, if you're a 7th-round player, you have a pretty low floor, right? So he hasn't shown that he can fill that free safety spot well enough. And personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable either leaving him in a starting role. So seriously, consider drafting a free safety. That's a huge need. Moving on to strong safety, we have Jaquiski Tart, a 2nd-round pick out of the 2015 draft. He's a solid player too. Not the best, but he's solid. He's holding down his role. Let's now move on to the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seattle Seahawks are also the team that has some bright spots, but definitely need a lot more improvement. Let's start at the quarterback position. We have Russell Wilson, a player over 30, a very mobile quarterback. The only main issue is that they are still in negotiation talks for this upcoming season. He wants to have a new contract and be here in the long term, but nothing has been on paper has been written down on paper yet. So his security with the team is still up in the air. Personally, though, I would also address that in the draft. Notably, too, they only have 4 picks in this draft. So the 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. That's really not good at all. If they seriously want to consider, competing for a playoff spot, that's something that they, what I think in my mind anyway, is that to hold off of playoff competition, playoff hopes, I guess, for this season, get a high draft pick for next season, build your team, and then move on from there. Because the state of the team now is not enough to succeed in the long run, right? Anyway, let's go on to running back position. They got Chris Carson in the 7th round of the 2017 draft. He's a solid player. Not much to complain about. And then they also have a Rashad Penny, 1st-round pick out of the 2018 draft. That was a pick for me personally that made me a little bit confused because they had glaring issues back then with their offensive line, and they didn't address it. Instead, they drafted a running back. He's not very important, I guess is what I'm saying. He's not a critical piece in the offense. Yes, the Seattle Seahawks ran the ball a lot, but I think they had the most rushing yards. But still, that was a weird decision in my point of view. Anyway, they have a couple more running backs in J.D. McKissick and Bo Scarborough. Yeah, not much to say. That's a solid group, but whatever. Moving on to tight end. Our starter is Nick Vanette, third round pick out of 2016 draft. Behind him is Will Dissey, fourth round pick out of the 2018 draft. Ed Dixon from Carolina, a veteran player. That personally is also a solid tight end group. I don't know. They don't really use tight ends as much in Seattle, so I wouldn't say it's a major issue. But that's something that they could look at. But I don't think with the limited amount of resources they have, it's not a major need. Let's move on now to tackle. Left tackle they have Dwayne Brown, Pro Bowl player. He's solid, but he's also old, and they're gonna have to consider replacing him in the future. At right tackle we have Jermaine Ifedi, a first round pick out of 2016. A lot of lows. There's a lot of low moments, but he's a first round pick, and they really need him to have some time to develop. So I wouldn't say okay, their first priority concern is a right tackle, but consider a backup to him in the future. The Seahawks direction at this point going forward is mainly running the ball, and then occasionally passing. And so the offensive line is a major need, and so far I think it's a letdown. It's been a letdown. So offensive line is something that they really need to work on. That leads me to interior offensive line. At left guard, Mike Iupati, an older player. At center, Justin Britt, a second round pick out of 2014 draft, and DJ Fluker at right guard. They also have behind them Ethan Posick, a second round pick out of the 2017 draft, and Joey Hunt, a sixth round pick out of the 2016 draft. In my point of view, I would need to evaluate them all, do some shuffling of the players, but ultimately I would draft someone with their first overall pick, their first pick in the draft. Offensive line is something that they need to work on, and going forward too, something that I would say requires more than just 4 draft picks. Anyway, going to receiver, we have a Doug Baldwin and a Tyler Lockett as your starting 2. That's it. Definitely receiver is a need. Having 2 wide receivers is not enough in this modern league. Definitely consider drafting a player, because behind them we really just have a David Moore and Amara Darbo and John Brown maybe, but that's it. They're not good. That's something that we need to improve on. Let's go on to the defense. Left defensive end, we got a Quinton Jefferson. Right defensive end, we got a Frank Clark, also like a Pro Bowl player. But there's some issues going around with they haven't really signed a contract. They haven't agreed up with the deal yet, so his future with the team is it's up in the air. But behind them they have a Rasheem Green, third round pick out of the 2018 draft last year. Cassius Marsh and Nate Orchard from the Browns. I think that's some solid depth, but definitely something that they need to improve on, especially with Frank Clark, his availability up in the air. They need to get someone else just in case. Moving on to interior defensive line, we have Jerron Reed, second round pick out of 2016 draft, and Nazir Jones, third round pick out of 2017 draft. They're both younger players, and behind them, no one else. So defensive tackle is definitely a need. probably someone I would address with in free agency, because already they don't have any they don't have like the draft cap resources to get who they want, right? So free agency, and then hopefully next year they can find someone. But man, they missed out on an opportunity to capitalize on this draft, because there's a lot of defensive linemen available. Moving on to linebacker, middle linebacker, we have Bobby Wagner, second round pick out of 2012 draft. I think he's someone that the Seahawks should definitely keep as long as possible, because he's been a staple. But you never know. I think his contract expires next year. We also have KJ Wright, a really good player as well. On their defense, they've been together for a very long time. Another notable player is Barcavius Mingo, Michael Kendricks. He's bounced around on a couple teams, but I think that group of four is already good enough. That's already good enough as it is. But they also have a linebacker in Shaquem Griffin, a fifth round pick out of the 2018 draft. A notable player, by the way, because of his he doesn't have one of his hands, so he's one of those special feel good stories. But also too, he's a really fast, instinctual player. He has fastest 40 in the NFL draft for linebackers, so that's something that they can develop going forward in the future as well. Going to the cornerback position, we have Shaquille Griffin and Trey Flowers. Both of them have been pretty good as they are. They've held their positions well. But the main thing, though, is their backup is not good. They're all young players. Definitely, I would say some veteran presence might be needed. But that's just my point of view. I would go after someone in the veteran market, just because they don't have any draft capital. And then finally, to safety, Brad McDougald and Tedrick Thompson at free safety, a fourth round pick out of the 2017 draft. I like that group, and also too, they have a guy in Delano Hill, a third round pick out of 2017 draft, who can fill that third safety role. I do think that more depth is needed. I don't really like the rest of the safeties on the roster. Safety is something that they could also address in the veteran market. Lastly, now we're going to review the Arizona Cardinals roster, starting with the quarterback position. Quarterback position, we have Josh Rosen, a first-round pick out of last year's draft. Brett Hundley, a backup player for Seattle last season. That is a solid. I think that's a solid quarterback group. The only thing is, though, is that Arizona is in the middle of a deep rebuild. They're going from the bottom up. They have a new head coach now, and then they have a quarterback sort of situation where they are thinking of drafting Kyler Murray with their first overall pick in the draft this year. But that's just in general. That's just part of the rebuilding process. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Josh Rosen. But even in the case that a Kyler Murray enters this locker room, I still think Josh Rosen can provide a backup role. If not, Brett Hundley can definitely step in as well. Moving now to the running back position, we have David Johnson, a third round pick out of the 2015 draft. A really good player that has really stepped up. He's a reliable guy on fantasy football, and he's backed up by players in Chase Edmonds, fourth round pick out of last year's draft, and T.J. Logan, a fifth round pick out of 2017 draft. The running back group is fine, in my point of view. Tight end group, Ricky Seals-Jones, Charles Clay, and Daryl Daniels. That's a mostly veteran group, a little bit older. I would definitely think about investing in tight end in the second to fourth rounds maybe. Good thing about the Arizona Cardinals too is that Not only are they the top in the draft, they also have a lot of picks. They have 10 picks, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, seventh. A lot of places to invest in players. A lot of potential positions where they can build upon. Tight end is definitely one that they can improve upon. Their tight end blocking needs are fine. Definitely invest someone that can be involved in the passing game as well. Moving on to tackle, we have DJ Humphries, a first round pick out of the 2015 draft, and at right tackle Marcus Gilbert, an older player that was traded from Pittsburgh. Those two I think will develop fine. And even behind them, they have a player in Corey Cunningham, 7th round pick out of last year's draft, who has apparently shown a lot of potential. Personally, that makes me feel a little bit more secure. They also have a 5th round pick player in Will Holden, who also provides some security there. Personally, I think their tackle positions are fine. Though I would definitely think about right tackle and developing a player for the future. It's not a glaring issue by any means, but something that they can think about going forward. Moving to the interior, at left guard we have J.R. Sweezy, a player from Seattle. I'm not necessarily confident in his abilities. Let's say at center we have a Mason Cole, a 3rd round pick out of the 2018 draft, and Justin Pugh, a player from New York. I think that group has some working to do. I don't think it's their staple going forward. Mason Cole definitely should stay part of that group, but I think they can definitely make some investments in interior offensive line in the draft. They are deep. They are very deep. They also have a player in Max Garcia. He used to be a starter in Denver. They also have a bunch of players that they traded for or acquired in free agency, such as Jeremy Vinovic. That interior offensive line is a position that is going to need a lot of experimentation. Because I don't think the 3 starting that at least are listed on this website are necessarily going to start in the long term. Going on to our receiver, our starting receivers are Larry Fitzgerald, Chad Williams, and Christian Kirk. Fitzgerald is an aging player. He is probably going to retire as a Cardinal as well. He's nearing the end of his career. We also have player, and Chad Williams is a 3rd round pick out of the 2017 draft, and Christian Kirk is a 2nd round player in the 2018 draft. Behind them, we have Kevin White, that used to be part of the Bears offense, and Farrell Cooper, who used to be part of the Rams. Everyone else is so-so. I don't think I'm a little bit insecure about their direction going forward. I would say wide receiver might be something that they seriously might consider in the first couple picks, 2nd through 4th round. But it's not too much of an issue for the season. Moving on to defensive end, the defensive side, we have a Terrell Suggs and Chandler Jones. We also have a Cameron Melvo and a Zach Moore. That's an okay group of 4. Zach Moore still needs some work. Definitely, if they're going to be a 4-3 defensive line depth is going to be essential. Defensive end is a need. Definitely a need. I would adjust in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd rounds, just to have a rotation at least. Defensive tackle, Darius Phelan. Also, Corey Peters, a 1st round pick in Robert Ndici from 2016. We also have a player in Vince Valentine, but I'm not necessarily confident in this group going forward. I would definitely say defensive tackle is also another need, something that they could definitely address in 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. Moving on to the linebacker position, that is one of the strong points of the roster. I'd say Hassan Reddick, a 1st round pick from 2017, has been has been a really consistent player. At middle linebacker, we have Jordan Hicks. He has some injury concerns from the past couple seasons, but when he's not injured, he's incredibly rangy. He's fast. He's a leader in the defense. But behind them, not much. Most of them are younger players. Definitely, linebacker is of those two starting players. They're definitely very, very good. One of the better ones in the league. But the linebacker is also a position that they could address, whether it be or most likely in the veteran market or in one of the later rounds. Let's now move on to cornerback position. We have a player in Patrick Peterson, a first-round pick out of the 2011 draft, and Robert Alford, a player they acquired from Atlanta. They also have a couple developmental guys, such as Brandon Williams as a third-round pick out of the 2016 draft. But that's about it. They're just 3 deep. I'd say definitely cornerback is another position of need, and probably consider them adjusting the nickel position as well. Finally, moving on to safety, we have a free safety, DJ Swearinger, a safety from Washington last season, and at strong safety, Budda Baker, a second-round pick out of 2017 draft. Behind him, we have Rudy Ford, a 6th-round pick out of 2017 draft, and that's about it. I don't think having a too deep at any position is good enough. Right, a team should always look to have an extra depth piece just in case someone gets injured. Having those two is good, but having more is better. Definitely, safety is a major need in my eyes. Something that should consider within the first 4 picks. And what do you know? We just finished our 3rd episode reviewing the NFC West, the LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Arizona Cardinals. Up next in the next episode, we will look at the AFC North, including the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cincinnati Bengals.